Hello and welcome to the International Physical Literacy Association podcast. My name is Kirk Bowyer, and if you are a parent, teacher, or coach, this podcast is for you because an understanding of physical literacy is absolutely vital. So, as I said, this is the official podcast from the IPLA, the birthplace of physical literacy, founded by Professor Margaret Whitehead. Here, we'll be bringing you stories of how physical literacy is shaping lives. So today, we have Dr. Gillian Bartle, who is a lecturer at the University of Dundee. And, well, looking at her LinkedIn profile, her experience and qualifications and everything really is just incredible in relation to physical literacy. We are going to ask her about her doctoral thesis, which was at the University of Stirling, which was called Physical Literacy with a socio-materialist sensibility. So let's welcome Gillian to unpack all of that.
Hi, Kirk. Hello, everybody. Thank you for that introduction.
It's such I could have been here all day in talking about what you have achieved in this field. It's incredible.
Thank you. You're very kind.
My first question to you is, what's your definition of physical literacy?
My definition: enjoying moving for life is my very simple soundbite rather than a definition, maybe. Enjoying movement for life.
Another question then is, what's one misconception about physical literacy that you'd like to clear up? Or do you not think there are any?
I think there are some. And I think probably other people on other podcasts have said what I'm about to suggest. And that is that the main misconception is that physical literacy is the same as fundamental movement skills.
Yes.
So practitioners might explain, not just practitioners actually, because I've heard it in academic discussions also, if someone is physically active, doing whatever it is they like to do, then they have physical literacy. And I think that's a very narrow way of conceiving what is physical activity, and therefore it's what is physical literacy. So that's the main misconception, I think, that permeates quite a lot of literature, as well as sometimes practitioner understanding.
Why do you think that's important?
I think it's important because, well, my little catchphrase saying enjoying moving says it all. I think we have to have that affective, what are the feelings people are experiencing? Why do they want to keep returning to it? So what's their motivation? Why would you be active unless you're enjoying it? Now, some people might say, well, my enjoyment is seeing the weight drop off. It's a very instrumental end. It's measurable. That's their goal. That's fine. I'm not against anybody doing anything because they have other specific goals in mind. But I think if you're claiming something as physical literacy, then it has to have that holistic approach. If you like, it has to have that holistic underpinning or informing everything that you are doing in terms of the physical activity. So it's enjoyment and it's the affective as well as the physical, as well as appreciating that people are actually highly engaged intellectually, cognitively, whatever word you want to use, whilst they are moving. And the knowledge and understanding that's displayed through the moving, for me, is absolutely key. So related to that, things like saying that, my class of pupils have all improved their fitness. They've all gone from, being able to do however many laps in whatever time to this number of laps more in whatever time. So physically, yes, maybe they've improved, but that's not physical literacy, but it's measurable. So in my profession, in my area, that's an easily achievable goal, if you like, but it's not physical literacy. So there are things missing there. So this is where there's a problem sometimes if you don't really grasp the whole idea of physical literacy in the Whiteheadian sense that we are talking about.
So let's go back. So you actually were once a PE teacher, right? So you went into teaching.
Yeah.
Well, before that, when you were young, when you were a kid, did anything lead to this career path that you brought yourself onto?
Yeah, it's funny. I talk about this in my physical literacy journey when I'm with students, because we do that to introduce a lot of reasons for or for not participating in physical activity throughout life.
Yeah.
And I had role models as parents that were just encouraging, providing opportunities, that kind of nice story. I was very lucky. I lived in a place where I could go outside and play. It was safe. There was a vast space, quite countryside, so hay bales and things to jump about on, plenty of room. So really lucky, lush, full play experiences. My mum was a PE teacher also at that time. And so she used to then do things like extracurricular clubs, so gymnastics clubs after school. And I would go along when I was, 10 years old. And I would help to get the 6-year-olds round their forward rolls and things like that. In fact, they were younger than 6, I think. So I've always been immersed in that kind of world, I think. So I feel comfortable in that world. And then my experiences through primary, I had a fantastic primary specialist, of which there are reduced numbers these days in Scotland anyway, in many of our local authorities. And she was very wide-ranging in what she offered us. So, for example, we went a ramble up Loch Brandy, a hill in Scotland, as primary 6s. Actually, it was a mixture of primary 5, 6, 7s probably. So, these experiences, just you can't help but be shaped by them. High school, I then was very confident and competent when I got to high school. So therefore, I fitted very well with the physical education that was there and participated all the way through. So it led to this PE world, which, was a natural step. Yeah. It was all set up.
It sounds like it. And especially your mum being a PE teacher as well. Was she a key influence for you?
Well, no. As it happens, when I went to PE college, she then retrained as a nurse. So I don't know what that tells you.
Okay, right.
Yes.
And so I'd like to really unpack the thesis, which you did, a doctoral thesis at the University of Dundee. Can you give us the full title of that?
Gosh. How long do we have on this podcast? So my thesis title is Materializing Physical Literacy, Rethinking Physical Education.
Okay.
And I'll explain why. The first part, so materializing physical literacy, actually, that's the hard part. Let me answer the second part. The rethinking physical education, that comes from a lot of decades of rallying against the perception of physical education, Cinderella subject as less important than maths and science, in the pecking order or hierarchy within schools, within high stakes assessment. And therefore this view that the body is less worthy of having its knowledge celebrated than the mind, that mind-body split that comes with the split of theory practice and so on. So I was continually rallying against that. I did an MPhil while I was first teaching, and it looked at assessment in physical education in Scotland because I was quite worried about physical education becoming examinable and 50% of it requiring pupils to sit on their bottoms and write a response, whereas actually we should be doing and showing the knowledge through the doing. So that's where this comes from, a very long time of thinking about this. And during that initial period, I was very lucky to meet Margaret Whitehead. This is way back, Kirk. Was it before you were born? I don't know. 95.
No,
I met her at a conference. So no, you were born, yes. And her work then, I was introduced to her work on embodiment, which is what she was deeply into at that point. So very lucky. Had lots of interesting conversations that kind of continued with her and spurred me on to do this MPhil.
So just for the listener's benefit here is that, as a reminder, Margaret Whitehead is the founder of the International Physical Literacy Association.
Yes. Yeah, and has conceptualized our contemporary understanding of physical literacy based on her own PhD thesis, which was very philosophical in its investigation, which is why we have this lovely foundation to what physical literacy is. So I struck a chord with a lot of that way back. So the rethinking physical education part then.
Sorry to interrupt you. So when you met Margaret at that conference.
Yes.
I'm fascinated and curious to find out what you spoke about, and because you quite vividly remember that, and that's quite a long time ago.
Yeah. It's one of those meetings which shaped the direction of my research, I think, in physical education, and gave me a lot of answers, I think, about what I was struggling with anyway. So just a lovely, timely serendipitous moment. And of course, at a conference, you're there for a few days. So we had various conversations, maybe after speakers and so on, other philosophers of physical education and sport who had given presentations. And most, I would say, were arguing against the mind-body split in some way or other. And so that there is one conversation, sorry, I'm stumbling a bit because there's one conversation that I
No.
remember which I would like to share because it's really lovely in Margaret's, a special light on Margaret, if you like. At these conferences, we have sometimes a meal, a banquet, they call it. Sounds very grand. This was a very small conference, so we could know all of the delegates, and
Yes.
names and so on, and we'd see one another the following year, so very, very much intimate experience in terms of a conference. They're usually very large and faceless. But this particular experience, we were at the banquet, I was sitting beside Margaret Whitehead, and there was a mix of, I would say, genders in the room, but heavily weighted towards male genders in the room. And she leaned into me and she said, I'm looking around at, who's here. My goodness, I can't believe. And she named a few people. He's here and he's here. And I said, yeah, but Margaret, I'm sitting beside you. I said, oh my goodness, just so humble. And she didn't realize, I don't know, just the whole, the effect and the thinking that she was bringing to the experience for all of us, not just me. So that was a lovely moment. I've obviously held that very close to me as a positive thing.
Yeah. That's really great. Margaret's definitely had a impact on myself and Claire, my wife, as well, where we obviously our business is centered around a lot of what she spoke about. And so, yeah, I think she's had a big impact on our lives as well. So, and I think that's why I'm super passionate about the IPLA in really that legacy and everything that you guys are doing and in the world of physical literacy. So, but anyway, carry on. That was a really lovely story. Carry on.
Well, that's the end of that Margaret Whitehead story.
Yeah, I thought that was great. Yeah, but we were talking about. I think we were talking about
The physical education part.
yes.
Yeah. So I was rethinking it. I've been rethinking it for a lot of decades, is the point, I think. And through various work experiences or other study or other research, finally it kind of has sort of culminated in this thesis where physical literacy has given almost the sort of peg on which to hang my coat, I suppose. And many people will have had that experience, sort of understanding the philosophical informants of it, of physical literacy. So I wanted to, in my practice, change how primary education students were experiencing physical education inputs during their training, during their undergraduate degrees or their postgraduate degrees. We have both here at Dundee. And so I wanted to embed physical literacy right from the start and try to enact what I intellectually understand as being a better way, I think, of sharing physical education in schools. So that's the Rethinking Physical Education part of my thesis title. So it's got a big story behind it itself. The first part, Materializing Physical Literacy, very much builds on Margaret Whitehead's work, and it comes from my love of philosophy of physical education and sport. And I take kind of Margaret's monist perspective and the phenomenological, so for people listening, phenomenology, basically your dialogue with the world. We're born moving, we come into the world. Margaret has a lovely example in her 2010 book about a child seeing stairs and wanting to climb them. We want to interact with the world. We want to move in it, up it, through it, whatever. And so I wanted to build on that part of Margaret's work, I think. And so I think I have done that. I have done that. I think I have. So I think the contribution I've made is bringing in the material in a much more explicit way than has already been done in Margaret's work. She does talk about dialogue with the world. And that's very much part of her philosophy, phenomenologically speaking. But my thesis puts that to the foreground. And actually, when we say a socio-materialist sensibility that you said at the introduction, that's the social and the material squished together to be the socio-material, because for me, the social and the material are not separate. So the way humans are moving around in the world can only happen as the things in the world are also moving with them or being with them. You can't have one without the other. So again, there's this idea of everything being entangled, so mind, body entangled, can't be separated, human and non-human being entangled. So my thesis is also based on post-humanism. So there's the socio-material and the post-human, because I think they are in parallel, conjoined, actually, and always conjoining and making different relations. So that's the materializing physical literacy part, and then rethinking physical education. It's my title.
Okay. I'm not going to pretend that I understood all of that.
Okay, I thought I was trying to do it in a very accessible way. I have failed.
It was. It's just that I'm not. You may need to dumb it down for me. So let's talk about. So you said there was 2 sections. There was the post-human section. Did you say?
Well,
Okay.
theory. That theory informs the whole thesis. It's not a section as such.
Okay. So can you explain that a little bit in more my my level of intelligence? So you
Not
have to
yet.
dumb it down a lot.
No, I can explain it. Yes. So if you imagine you're going to, say, play badminton, you require certain things in order for that to happen. You can't play badminton without thinking at least about an object that you're going to hit and
Okay.
send and receive, and set with a partner, probably. You may also conceive of a net of some kind across the middle. You've got a very sort of comfortable perspective on different sports and contexts and so on. So you'll know what a badminton court looks like. You'll know what a badminton net and a shuttlecock is and a racket. Many of us do. But for primary education students, it's about breaking down that barrier, for me anyway, of you don't have to have the exact equipment, but there are things that can enable a badminton-like activity to happen. So it might be that the school doesn't have a badminton net, but it's maybe got some tape.
Like a balloon or something like that they could.
Well, it's maybe got a tape to put across the hall or between 2 trees if you're outside. Maybe they've got balloons, maybe they've got beach balls, whatever it might be. So maybe we're just using our hands and we're sending this object across the tape to somebody on the other side who catches it and then sends it back. So the idea of badminton is slightly changed, but it might lead to, going into the community that a child might be able to access badminton later on at the school or when they're in high school or something. So the sort of skills that are being used are approximating, sending, receiving a shuttlecock over a net.
Okay, yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that equipment. But the point is, for the post-human, we are with the things in order for that to occur as something like badminton or sending and receiving a ball or whatever it might be. That cannot happen without the synergy and the relations of all of those things. You need them. So my thesis doesn't separate them.
Right.
In order for something to be considered as badminton, there must be things and humans working together in order for that to be badminton.
Okay. I got it.
See, does that help?
Yes. Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it sounds really obvious, Kirk. It sounds like, well, yeah, we all know you need a ball and you need somebody to catch it at the other side. We all know that. But the reason it was important in the thesis as a perspective is the things are actually, they have agency also. So they can act with what Margaret Whitehead calls an affordance. They have affordances. They offer something for the human to interact. So that set of stairs, when I'm a toddler and I see it, I just want to go up it. Of course, the parent is completely freaking out because they think you're just going to fall backwards as soon as you turn around. Hi, mommy,
Yeah.
So, but that's the stairs calling the human. So the thing is doing as much work as the human is. So the post-human connectivity and relationality is absolutely key to everything that we're doing in terms of the physical activity world, the physical literacy world.
Like a climbing frame to a kid in
Sure.
a park
Yes.
where it's calling on the kid to in fact, it doesn't even have to be a kid. I quite like crawling.
Exactly. Well, I was going to say this applies all the way up through the life course. It's as adults we want to go up mountains.
Yes.
if you're going to continue with that climbing.
Does that then go alongside what? So I did a podcast with Trevor, who was doing planning, who's
Yes.
consulting and planning in housing developments and
Yes.
putting things that actually you have where there's that calling to become active in a certain way. If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
he's got lovely examples that absolutely strike a chord with what I would look at as a post-human and socio-materialist
Okay.
uh,
Yeah.
enacting of physical literacy. It is like parkour. You see parkour people out
Yeah.
there just climbing, running along, going over bollards, jumping over walls, running up steps. Trevor has lovely examples of that, where it just calls people to move differently through an environment. And if you think about it, that's what we do in physical education. We're trying to expose and give opportunities for pupils to experience multiple environments. And it doesn't matter the capability of the pupils. For me, it's about providing an enabling environment. So anyone can come into that space and move, regardless of if they're a wheelchair user or if they are, if they don't like the sensory touch of a certain kind of ball or something, they've got options not to interact with that piece of equipment. The things are really key to how pupils are experiencing their physical education.
How does motivation come into this then? In terms of, let's talk kids at school, because, I mean, you use an example there of as an adult, there's mountains that people want to climb, and some people will be motivated to do that. And some people's motivation to move will be something else. And by the way, I couldn't think of anything worse than climbing a mountain, if I'm honest. But so how does that come into schools when we're trying to, I suppose, motivate kids to want to move?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know, I have a nice example of something that was done in a secondary school. So, away from my work as the primary educator, if you like, I did some research with a secondary school here in Scotland. And what they had done is, well, first thing they had done was the head of department managed to get the timetable such that all of the Friday afternoon was available for senior pupils. So, your post 16 pupils who had not opted for physical education as a high stakes examinable subject, but they were doing core physical education still. The head of department had got a Friday afternoon for this subject, if you like, which isn't normal, by the way, in Scottish schools. So that was the first thing. So there was a structural change that happened. And that was done with the idea that the head teacher had also made lots of community links so that the student pupils had the choice of they could stay in the school and do something, whether it be volleyball, use the fitness suite, whatever it might be. They could go into the community to go and attend gyms and actually get some instruction in a gym in the community. They could go down to do, this sounds very grand, but they could go down to the riverside and they could do some sailing. So happens, here in Dundee, we're on the River Tay, so that's accessible for us. It might not be for all school students. And there were other options. One was to go to an outdoor centre and they could then do things like mountain biking, archery, a kind of dry ski slope experience and so on. So you can see, first of all, the structural change, the options of activities that were then available, and also the integration into a community, into facilities that otherwise might have appeared intimidating for some of these pupils once they'd left school. Are they going to actually walk into the sailing club? No,
Yeah.
I don't think so. So the links were made then. So for after school, if the students were still going to be living in that area, then they had a very easy way to continue with these activities. And what they found was at the previous years, the attendance at physical education had been, say there were 100 pupils normally, it had been something like 30, so roughly a third. By the time they had instigated just the first term of this, so we're talking from August to October in a Scottish school, the uptake and the participation had remained well above the 90%. So that's phenomenal. I mean, and it was this enabling people to choose. So I think that motivation then, that sort of goes hand in hand. If people can choose what they can do or want to try, it's giving them the ownership, isn't it? It's, well, I don't ever want to go sailing because I might fall in and get wet. I can't swim. I hate it. I'm never doing it. I'm going to go to the gym. But they're still doing something,
Yeah. And I think
and
that
they've chosen it.
yeah, absolutely. And the options that the amount of options that they've had, that
It
they've
was
gotten, I
phenomenal.
mean,
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
And a lot of it was not expensive. It wasn't that the pupils were then asked to pay money for something. I think they paid 50 pence per go if it was something in the community, for example. And they could change, after the first term, they could change to a different thing. And then after Christmas, they could change to something else. So that was it. And the head said to me that if somebody said, I really can't even pay 50 pence to do that, he would make sure that that was not a barrier. So there was a wee bit of kindness, but a lot was needed because this was all done in a very accessible, low-cost way with just arrangement by him going out and doing the footwork with the gym, for example, and saying, look,
Yeah.
what do you think about this? And if that gym then gets one membership, then they've made their money back, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the lifetime value of a kid that continues to go to that gym for many, many years is
Yeah,
significant.
yeah.
So it's impressive that it was over 90% because initially I was
It was
thinking
phenomenal.
it
It was
is
very
phenomenal.
good.
Because initially I was thinking part of physical literacy, I suppose, is confidence, and I was thinking, well, maybe the barrier to all of those things to some kids would be the confidence to try something new, the confidence to go and do those things they may not have skills to do.
That's right.
So how I guess that may have been I don't know, but I guess that may have come from teachers and reinforcement.
And so on. In terms of the confidence and motivation, I think with the pupils, the example I just gave of the secondary, I don't know what had gone on prior to that with their experiences through schooling even. I don't know how they felt. I don't know.
No.
Clearly they voted with their feet and did not attend when it was the sort of old style, if you want to call it that, the previous arrangement of come to the class. It was for a period, of an hour, and they just didn't want to go. So they didn't. So the change is more than just it was systemic. It had to have the deputy head teacher who's also willing to change the timetable. So a lot of things went on to enable that to work. So back to the confidence motivation question, these things start from way back when you're, it's antenatal, and then it's through early years, and we can't dismiss how formative these early years are right into the primary and so on. So I think if we get it right in the primary school, we've got a really good chance of pupils moving into secondary environments where obviously their social groups change, the sort of hormones kick in. They don't want to be seen to be not good at something, and they
Yeah.
just don't enjoy things as openly, maybe. For some pupils, these barriers are real for lots of pupils.
Yeah.
And if we can do more in the primary to make them, not make them, but to help them experience the joy of movement and be confident and competent to
Yes.
then take that into secondary, then you've got more of a chance of keeping them. But the secondary
Yeah.
has to alter what it offers as well, I think. There's an ownership on both. It's not just if the primary does it right, it'll be fixed. I think that's really naive.
Yeah.
It's a much bigger problem.
So you're now teaching teachers, right? In Dundee University.
I teach student teachers,
Shouldn't
but
it? Yeah.
I also do professional development with in-service teachers
Okay.
as
Right.
well. Yeah,
So my question is, so there might be a lot of teachers listening. I hope there is.
that would be
What do
great.
you think? Yes, it would be. What do you think teachers need to understand about developing physical literacy in children?
Well, that's an interesting one. I take heart from, in our system up here in Scotland, we have policy documents, obviously, that are well known by teachers. And one of those relating to health and well-being, which is core to our curriculum at the moment, and physical education sits in there. So in the physical education documentation, we have what some teachers refer to as the PE pizza. So if you imagine a circle, it's split into four. And each of those quarters are a key area of learning in physical education. So they are physical competence, Makes sense. It's not physical education if you don't have the physical. Personal qualities. So that would capture what Margaret Whitehead calls the affective learning domain. Well, it's been called the affective learning domain prior to Whitehead, Bloom and whatnot. But so that's your personal qualities. And then we have physical fitness and we have cognitive skills. So that's the 4 key areas. When I was doing my research with the primary education students, I saw a lot of physical literacy in practice, but they didn't know that's what it was. So the policy is actually quite nicely in tune with what physical literacy is asking us to do. So physical literacy, obviously looking for that holistic learning. The Scottish policy is asking the same. I think for me, it's about what do you see is going on? What's the observation? It's not just what does a teacher tell you they're doing, or a student teacher, I would say, tell you they're doing. And I saw in practice aspects of physical literacy or pockets where physical literacy was being enacted. So all of that was there.
Can
The
you give an
personal
example of that?
qualities.
Can you give an example of that, Julia?
Oh, yes. Well, so the students, for example, would be teaching outside early years in particular, I saw, and they would be delivering a range of activities, delivering, imagine like a carousel. So you've got a few stations maybe, and the students are moving around. The pupils, sorry, are moving around. And so the student teacher would be moving around all the different groups. One group, I remember hearing the teacher, she was helping pupils holding, like tri-golf, plastic golf clubs, and they were trying to get it into target. She had to attend to that station quite a lot because there was clearly potential for
Yeah. It
things
could
to
go
be
wrong.
flung about. But I mean, the balls were not traveling far. They were little plastic,
Okay.
airflow. And I could hear how she was asking the pupils, what do you think we need to do to get this to do da 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 da. So she's immediately engaging the cognitive skills of that pupil. And the
Okay.
pupil is then thinking, and I could hear pupils then saying to each other in other stations, oh, I missed that time. Oh, I'm gonna try again. There's some motivation coming through. So that's what you could see was going on, see, hear, feel, as me as an observer. So the physical, the cognitive, and the affective, all in one, that tiny little episode. And then some improvement for the pupil. And the students, when I interviewed them, I asked them to bring a thing with them to their interview, which the interviews were done like we're doing via media. So
Yeah, Zoom. Yeah.
they brought with them an artifact, something that represented physical literacy to them at the time. Most of two of them brought a ball. One brought a tennis ball, one brought a little seed. I thought that was fabulous. But they didn't call their activities, their teaching in PE, they didn't call it physical literacy. They didn't think they were doing physical literacy. And yet they could talk holistically. They could talk to that holistic idea of capturing the all of the parts of physical literacy, all the parts of the Scottish curriculum policy, but they didn't call it that. So I think semantics is an interesting one. And just because it's not called something, it doesn't mean it isn't.
Yeah.
When I'm thinking now about in-service teachers who I've worked with in this local area for about 3 years now, the common thing that they come away saying, that was great. You gave us so many ideas for activities. And I just think, well, what are your ideas? But I think their ideas and what they're doing as physical activities are probably just as close to physical literacy as I was giving them. But maybe they've just got some different ideas now. So it's like a refresh. And so I think when you open the conversation up with those in-service teachers, and there were primary and secondary at these sessions, you get more of an idea that actually what you're doing is already basically there. So it's about their knowledge, I think, of what is physical literacy and what am I doing that, yes, I am thinking holistically with my pupils, my class. I am thinking about their motivation. Why would they not be participating? What can I do to change that? So I think dialogue is really important with students and professionals.
Yeah, it's because you mentioned the early years there, and I was thinking as you were saying that is also how it's packaged. So, we obviously we have a business that's for that age, and what we find is that you could get coaches that, train coaches that are training that will do the same activity as another coach, but the other coach would be almost as an actor or an actress. They're so enthusiastic and they're so charismatic. It'll be almost like a Mr. Tumble or a BBC kind of a children's presenter in presenting the same thing, but it sparks incredible motivation from the kids to want to follow. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, it does. Yes. But I think that's like any teacher, isn't it, as well?
Yeah,
I've worked with sports coaches too. And yeah, you get some who generate that enthusiasm, don't you, quite easily.
yeah,
Same with teachers in the classroom. And we've all had teachers who generated that enthusiasm in us, and you had some who did not. So yeah, and that's also a relational sort of skill, isn't it, that the practitioner has or brings with them to the environment.
So we're coming towards the end now, and it's been such an amazing conversation. If you had some advice for parents in terms of physical literacy in their own children, what would that be?
Let your children play.
There we go.
Yeah, don't be scared for them because risky play is something that's crucial, I think. Let them play. And I'm talking from a position, of course, that's probably a bit privileged. There are plenty of parents, carers who will be in a position where, well, I can't let my child out to play without me going with them. And if I do that, then, the dinner won't get made, the baby won't get this, and so on. So, people who live in, high-rise flats, that kind of thing, I'm thinking,
Yeah,
it's so difficult. So for me to just be blasé and say, let them play, it's a little bit, I say it cautiously and I say it with full understanding that that's actually a bit of a privileged position. So for those that are stuck inside, I revert to what we did at COVID, during COVID. And we saw some fantastic practice and ideas for things at home because I was still teaching students online. PE online for that year was very tricky, but I was learning from my colleagues in China and in New Zealand, who were, of course, ahead of us in terms of their lockdown situation. And they were putting up fantastic webinars and things for anyone to access about what they were trying to do with their pupils virtually. Roll up your socks and use toilet rolls and chuck the socks at the toilet rolls and try and knock them over.
yeah,
People can do that inside, just thinking of ideas like that people can do. They don't have to have the green fields outside and, so letting them play, but they can play inside too. It's, I'm always trying to find ways around that because I just think you can't, policy can be idealist, researchers can be idealists. I think we really need to think about the big picture and be slightly more realist, as well as having the ideal, because you've got to strive for what's best for people, I think. And physical literacy is something that I firmly believe is so embedded in solid philosophical thinking and basis that's what sets it apart from physical activity, in this sort of, if you talk about that in a general sense. I think it gives a real strength to any practitioner who's trying to say that, look, movement is valuable, it's good, do it.
yeah. Oh,
So the ideal is good, but I think we have to be real as well.
yeah. Thank you so much, Gillian. It's been a really great chat. And as
Been a
always,
pleasure, Kirk.
thank you.
Yeah, I love talking about this.
Yeah, it's really, really brilliant. Thank you. I'm learning so much from all of you fantastic people at the IPLA, and that's
Yeah,
what I was
I'm
going
going to listen to the series to
to.
listen to my colleagues.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And as I always say at the end of this, the International Physical Literacy Association, if you want to find out more about physical literacy, you can't really go wrong by going to the website, the IPLA website, where there's all different courses that you can do. There's a membership. There's just so much to learn on there. And I'm constantly learning from it. So thank you, Gillian. It's been fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.